Olivia's voice cuts through the Christmas Eve chatter like a knife, screaming, "I'm useless, a burden who can't even carry a plate without screwing up." Her green velvet dress, swishing as she points at me, in front of everyone at her fancy Portland dinner party. I'm holding the wooden star I carved for my granddaughter Carolyn, my fingers tight around it because she laughed at it earlier, calling it cheap. Something a kid could have made better. I poured weeks into that gift, sanding it smooth, etching Carolyn's initials, but Olivia's venom stings worse than anything, especially because she doesn't know I got her promoted to vice president at her tech company, my secret Christmas. Our surprise to fix our broken family. Hello, I'm Debra, 68 years old. Before I dive into this story, please take a moment to like, subscribe, comment with where you're watching from. Your support means everything. I'd spent all day getting ready for that party at Wayne and Olivia's house, curling my hair, picking a red sweater to fit the holiday mood, wrapping Carolyn's star with care because she loves constellations, always points at the stars when we're outside. I thought it'd mean something unlike the shiny boxes Olivia buys without a second thought. Wayne called me that morning, sounding frazzled, saying Olivia was going overboard with the party, inviting her parents, Bobby and Maria, half their neighborhood. "Mom, just bring something small," he said, like my presence was an afterthought. I should have seen the warning signs, but I showed up anyway, carrying that star, hoping for a good night. Their house was decked out like a showroom, lights everywhere, a huge tree, a table set with glasses that screamed money. Olivia was in charge, ordering caterers around, while Wayne kept Carolyn from spilling juice on the rug. Bobby and Maria lounged with wine, acting like royalty. I tucked my gift under the tree next to Olivia's pile of perfect packages and offered to help with the food. Olivia brushed me off, her smile sharp. "We're fine, Debra. Just sit." I felt out of place, but I stayed chatting with Carolyn about her sparkly headband, trying to ignore the way Olivia's eyes flicked over me like I didn't belong. Dinner started okay, everyone eating passing dishes, Carolyn giggling as she showed me her new coloring book. But Olivia couldn't let it be. She started with little jabs loud enough for everyone to hear. "Debra, that apartment of yours must be so quiet, just you and those little crafts." Maria smirked, and I forced a laugh, letting it slide. Then Carolyn held up my star proud, and Olivia's lips curled. "That's sweet, Debra." Did you pick it up at a garage sale?" Bobby chuckled, and I gripped my napkin, keeping quiet, but it hurt bad. Wayne shot her a look, but said nothing, and Carolyn hugged the star, closer, confused. Then it all blew up. I was helping clear the table, carrying plates to the kitchen, when one slipped and hit the floor with a thud. It didn't break, but Olivia spun around, her face twisted. "God, Debra, you're useless, a burden who can't do anything right." Her words echoed everyone, staring Carolyn's eyes wide. Wayne setting his glass down hard. I stood there, plate in hand, feeling like I'd been slapped, wanting to yell that I'd spent weeks convincing Tom, the CEO of her company, to give her that vice president job. I'd called in favors vouched for her because I thought it'd make her respect me. But I didn't say it. I walked to the living room, set the plate down, grabbed the star, needing to hold on to something real. Wayne followed, trying to smooth things over. "Mom, she's just wound up from the party," he said, his voice tired. I looked at him, my son, and saw how he always defends her, like I was the one causing trouble. "Wayne, she meant it," I said, and he sighed, rubbing his neck. "Let's not do this now." Carolyn ran over, tugging my sleeve. "Grandma, keep my star safe." "Okay," I nodded, promising I would, and decided right then that Olivia wasn't going to walk away from this. I had leveraged her promotion, and I wasn't going to let her keep treating me like dirt. Back at the dining room, Olivia was laughing again, like she hadn't just torn into me, pouring wine for her parents, bragging about her promotion. "They told me yesterday," she said, all proud. I kept quiet, because she had no clue it was my doing. I'd spent hours talking up her skills to Tom, a friend from way back, convincing him she could handle it, even though I had doubts. Now she was acting like she'd climbed that ladder alone, not even glancing my way. I stayed busy refilling water, playing with Carolyn, avoiding her smug smiles, but inside I was furious. Every word she said about her new office felt like another slap. By the end of the night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pulled Wayne aside in the hallway away from the crowd. "We need to talk about Olivia," I said, keeping my voice low. He looked worn out, like he knew this was coming. "Mom, it's Christmas Eve. Can't we just—" I cut him off. "She's out of line, Wayne, and you know it. I've done more for her than she'll ever understand." He frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" I almost spilled about the promotion, but held back, wanting Olivia to hear it first, to see her reaction when she realized I wasn't some nobody she could shove around. "Just talk to her," I said, and walked away, grabbing my coat. I left with Carolyn's star driving home through Portland, gripping it so hard my fingers hurt, replaying Olivia's words over and over. I'd given her everything money for their house time with my granddaughter, even that job, and she'd thrown it back at me. When I got to my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and called Tom. "It's about Olivia's promotion," I said, my voice steady. He was surprised, but listened. "What's wrong, Debra?" I didn't give details, just said, "She's not right for it anymore." He promised to look into it, and I hung up feeling a mix of relief and dread. I'd started something big, and there was no going back. Wayne texted me later, accusing me of messing with Olivia's job. "Mom, what did you do? Olivia's freaking out." I didn't reply, not ready to face him yet. Olivia had crossed a line, and I was done playing nice. But I knew this wasn't just about her. It was about Wayne, Carolyn, what was left of our family. I had no idea how far this would go, how it'd tear us apart, but I was ready to find out. I was still staring at Wayne's text, accusing me of messing with Olivia's job when my phone rang, and it was her screaming before I could even say hello, demanding to know why I'd talked to Tom, the CEO of her company, about her promotion. I set Carolyn's wooden star on my kitchen table, gripping the phone because I'd only told Tom to reconsider her vice president role after she called me useless at her Christmas Eve party. But I wasn't ready to tell her that I'd gotten her or the job in the first place. My big gesture to fix our family that was now blowing up in my face. "Olivia, you humiliated me in front of everyone," I said, keeping my voice steady, but she cut me off laughing like I was some petty old lady. "Debra, get over it. They just confirmed my promotion, so whatever you tried didn't work. Stop meddling." She hung up, and I stood there furious, because she had no idea I'd spent weeks pulling strings with Tom to get her that job, and now she was acting like she'd earned it all on her own. Wayne showed up at my apartment an hour later, banging on the door, his face flushed like he'd driven over in a rage. He stormed in tie, half undone, pointing at me like I was the problem. "Mom, did you really call Tom Olivia's freaking out, saying her promotion's under review because of you?" I tried to stay calm, setting my coffee mug down, but I was boiling inside because I'd done everything for them, and now I was the villain. "Wayne, she called me a burden in front of your daughter," I said, pointing at the star Carolyn loved. "You think that's okay?" He paced my living room, shaking his head. "She was stressed, Mom. You can't go after her job over one fight." I wanted to tell him I'd gotten her that job, but I held back because I wanted Olivia to feel it first, to know I wasn't some nobody she could push around. "I only asked Tom to look at her fit," I said. And Wayne threw his hands up. "That's her career, Mom. You're crossing a line." He left, slamming the door, and I felt like I'd lost him, my own son, to her. Then my bank called, and that's when things got worse. The manager, a guy I've trusted for years, asked me to come in about my shared account with Wayne and Olivia, the one I set up to help with family bills after they bought that big house. I drove over, sat in his office, and he slid a stack of statements across the desk, showing Olivia had spent $12,000 in a month, $7,000 on a designer coat, $3,000 at a fancy restaurant, $2,000 on jewelry. I stared at the numbers, my face burning, because this was my money saved for years, meant for Carolyn's future or real emergencies, not Olivia's shopping addiction. "How'd she do this?" I asked, my voice tight. He shrugged, looking sorry. "She's authorized Debra. She can spend whatever's there." I told him to lock the account, no more access, until I figured this out, and walked out feeling like a fool for ever trusting her with my savings. I got home and found a voicemail from Olivia, her voice all sugary like she hadn't just screamed at me. "Debra, let's put last night behind us. Okay, I need help with Carolyn's Christmas pageant, some costumes and stuff. I didn't call back knowing she was fishing for money, like always. Instead, I rang Janet, my friend who's never liked Olivia, and spilled everything the bank, the promotion Wayne's visit. You've got to cut her off, Janet said, blunt as ever. She's been using you forever. And now with that job, she's unstoppable. I knew she was right, but it stung, because I'd thought that promotion would make Olivia see me differently, and instead it was making her bolder, meaner. Olivia showed up at my door later, uninvited, holding a latte like we were buddies sitting on my couch with her legs crossed, acting like nothing happened. Debra, the promotion's official, she said, grinning wide. New office. Big raise, the whole deal. But I need some cash to get started. $6,000 for new clothes, networking dinners, you know. I couldn't believe her nerve asking for more after what she'd already taken. Olivia, I know about the $12,000 you spent, I said, staring her down. Her grin slipped, just for a second, then she waved it off. That was for the family, Debra. The party, some stuff for Carolyn. I wasn't buying it. A $7,000 coat is for Carolyn, I asked, and she leaned forward, eyes hard. Don't start policing my spending. You gave me access, so I used it. What's the big deal? The big deal was her treating my money like her personal piggy bank, and I was done. I told her to get out, and she stood tossing her hair. You're making a bad move, Debra. I'm not someone you want to cross now. I shut the door behind her, my anger simmering, because I knew she meant it. She'd find a way to hurt me. Wayne called soon after, sounding desperate. Mom Olivia's saying, you froze the account and tried to tank her job. Why are you doing this? I tried to explain the spending, but he interrupted. She's under pressure, Mom. That promotion's huge, and you're making it worse. I couldn't believe my son was blind to her after she'd burned through my money like it was nothing. Wayne, she's taking advantage of us both, I said, and he went quiet, then hung up, leaving me wondering if I'd pushed him too far. Then Bobby, Olivia's dad, called, catching me off guard, because we rarely spoke. His voice was heavy, like he was carrying bad news. Debra, we need to talk about Olivia and Wayne. I know about the money. I froze, because if Bobby was reaching out, it meant things were uglier than I thought. We set a meeting at a diner for the next day, and I hung up looking at Carolyn's star on my table, realizing this fight wasn't just about Olivia's promotion or my money anymore. It was about my family, my granddaughter, and how far I'd have to go to protect them from her greed. I didn't know what Bobby was going to say, but I knew it was going to change everything. I hung up with Bobby, Olivia's dad, still stunned that he'd called to talk about her and Wayne's money problems, and I barely had time to process it when my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia, demanding I meet her at their house right away. No explanation, just a blunt order, like I was her assistant. I grabbed Carolyn's wooden star off my kitchen table, the one I'd carved for her Christmas gift, and drove to their Portland house, knowing this wasn't going to be a friendly chat after I'd frozen our shared bank account and called out her $12,000 spending spree, $7,000 on a coat, $3,000 on dinners, $2,000 on jewelry. I'd already told her I wasn't giving her the $6,000 she wanted for her new vice president job, of the one I'd secretly gotten her by pulling strings with Tom, the CEO, and now she was acting like I owed her everything, like calling Army useless at her Christmas Eve party was just a minor slip. I walked into their house, and Olivia was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, her designer coat draped over a chair like a trophy. Wayne was there too, holding Carolyn's hand, looking like he hadn't slept, and Carolyn ran to me, hugging my legs, saying, "Grandma, are you staying for dinner?" I smiled at her, but before I could answer, Olivia snapped Carolyn, "Go play in your room. Adults need to talk." Carolyn pouted, but obeyed, clutching her sparkly headband, and I set her star on the coffee table, feeling Olivia's eyes on me, like I'd brought something dirty into her perfect home. "Debra, you froze the account," Olivia said, her voice low and sharp. "I need that money for Carolyn's school fees, her activities, and now my promotion expenses. You're punishing us for nothing." I couldn't believe her gall, acting like her shopping was for Carolyn. "Olivia, you spent $12,000 on luxury stuff," I said, keeping my tone firm. "That's not for Carolyn. She rolled her eyes, tossing her hair. Don't exaggerate. I'm building a life for this family. Something you wouldn't understand. Wayne shifted uncomfortable, but didn't speak, and I saw how he let her run the show. Then she dropped the bomb. If you don't unfreeze the account and give me $10,000 by tomorrow, she said, leaning forward, you won't see Carolyn anymore. No visits, no calls, nothing. I froze her words, hitting like a punch, because Carolyn was everything to me, the reason I'd put up with Olivia's nonsense for years. Wayne finally spoke, his voice weak. Liv, that's too far. But she shot him a look, and he backed down, looking at the floor. Debra, I'm serious, she went on. I'm vice president now. I don't need your drama dragging me down. Pay up, or you're out of her life. I wanted to scream that I'd gotten her. That job spent weeks convincing Tom to promote her, but I held back because I wasn't ready to tip my hand. Instead, I picked up Carolyn's star and walked out saying, you don't get to use my granddaughter like a bargaining chip. Olivia laughed behind me. Try me, Debra. I drove straight to the diner to meet Bobby, Olivia's dad, my mind racing with her threat, knowing I had to figure out how deep this mess went before I lost Carolyn for good. Bobby was already there, sitting in a booth, his face lined and serious, sipping coffee. He waved me over, and I slid in, setting the star on the table, needing something to ground me. Debra, I'm sorry to drag you into this, he said, his voice heavy. Olivia's out of control with money, and Wayne's not stopping her. He pulled out a folder, sliding it to me, and I opened it to find bank statements, loan documents, even a notice from a collection agency. They're in debt, he said. $50,000 in credit cards, a second mortgage they didn't tell us about, and Olivia's been borrowing from us, saying it's for Carolyn. I stared at the papers, seeing charges for vacations, a boat stuff I knew Carolyn never saw. Bobby, she's been using my account too, I said, my voice tight. 12 grand in a month. He nodded, grim. I figured. She's been like this since she was young, always wanting more, but now it's ruining them. I asked why he was telling me, and he leaned forward, eyes intense. Because you're the only one who can stop her. Wayne's too weak, and Maria, my wife, keeps making excuses for Olivia. I know you've got pull with Tom at her company. I heard you got her that promotion. I was shocked he knew. How, I asked, and he shrugged. Tom's an old golf buddy. He mentioned you vouched for her. I felt exposed because I'd kept that secret to use against Olivia, not to share with her dad. Bobby, I already told Tom she's not right for it, I said, and he nodded like he expected it. Good. But she's not just burning through money. She's lying to Wayne about it, saying it's all for their future. He doesn't know half of what she's done. I asked what he wanted from me, and he said, stand your ground. Don't give her another dime. I'll handle Maria and try to talk sense into Wayne. But you need to show Olivia she can't win. I agreed, but her threat about Carolyn echoed in my head, making it hard to think straight. I left the diner with Bobby's folder, driving to Wayne's office, because I needed him to hear the truth before Olivia twisted it further. He was at his desk, papers everywhere, looking stressed. Mom, what? Now, he said, barely looking up. I set the folder in front of him, open to the debt notices. Olivia's lying to you, I said. She's got you $50,000 in debt, borrowing from your in-laws, spending my money like it's hers. He pushed the folder away, shaking his head. This isn't true. She's handling our finances for Carolyn's sake. I pointed at the boat, charged $20,000. This is for Carolyn. He went quiet, but then said, she's under pressure with the promotion, Mom. She's not perfect, but she's trying. I couldn't believe he was still defending her, even with proof. Wayne, she threatened to keep Carolyn from me unless I pay $10,000, I said, and he looked up shocked. She wouldn't do that. But I saw doubt in his eyes, and I pressed. Ask her yourself. He promised to talk to her, but his voice was shaky, like he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. I went home, setting the folder and Carolyn's star on my table, when my phone rang again. Olivia, her voice cold as ice. Debra, you've been talking to my dad, haven't you? Stay out of my business or you'll regret it. I didn't back down. Olivia, I know about your debts, the lies to Wayne. This stops now. She laughed sharp and mean. You think you can scare me? I'm vice president. You're nothing. She hung up, and I knew she was planning something, because she didn't make threats she couldn't keep. I called Tom right after my voice firm. Whatever you're doing about Olivia's job, do it fast, I said. He hesitated, saying, Debra, this is tricky. She's already started. I insisted, telling him she was unfit, and he agreed to push it through, but warned it'd take a couple days. I hung up knowing I'd just upped the stakes, but Olivia's threat about Carolyn left me no choice. Then Carolyn called using her iPad, her voice small and confused. Grandma, why's Mommy mad at you? She said you're not coming over anymore. I felt like I'd been kicked, but kept my voice soft. Sweetie, I'll always be here for you. Okay, we'll fix this. She said, promise, and I did, even though I wasn't sure how. After we hung up, I looked at her star, realizing this fight was bigger than money or jobs. It was about keeping my granddaughter in my life, and I wasn't going to let Olivia take her away, no matter what it cost me. Carolyn's small voice asking why Olivia was mad, and if I'd stop coming over, was still ringing in my ears when I got a call from Tom, the CEO of Olivia's company, saying he'd finalized the decision to pull her vice president promotion, fire her outright, because of concerns I'd raised about her behavior, and he needed me to confirm it was what I wanted before he sent the notice. I set Carolyn's wooden star on my kitchen table, the one I'd carved for her Christmas gift, and told Tom to go ahead, because Olivia had crossed every line, calling me useless at her Christmas Eve party, spending $12,000 of my money on luxury junk, demanding $10,000 more, and now threatening to keep my granddaughter away unless I paid up. I'd gotten her that job, spent weeks convincing Tom she could handle it, and she'd thrown it back in my face, acting like I was nothing, and I wasn't going to let her win. Not after Bobby, her dad, showed me proof of her and Wayne's $50,000 debt loans and lies. I drove to Wayne and Olivia's house for their second Christmas Eve, gathering knowing this was going to be the night everything exploded, because Tom had promised the firing notice would hit Olivia's email during the party. Their place was packed again, lights twinkling, guests chatting, but I barely noticed, focused on what was coming. Olivia was in a red dress, holding a wine glass, laughing with her parents, Bobby and Maria, like she owned the world. Wayne was chasing Carolyn around, trying to keep her from grabbing extra cookies, and when Carolyn saw me, she ran over, hugging me tight. Grandma, you came, she said, and I handed her the star, saying, keep this close. Okay. She nodded, running off to show it to Wayne, and I caught Olivia's eye, her smile tight, like she knew I was trouble. Dinner started, everyone passing plates, but Olivia couldn't resist taking shots at me. Debra still tinkering with those little crafts, she said loud enough for Maria to smirk. I ignored her, helping Carolyn cut her chicken, but then Olivia's phone buzzed on the table, and she glanced at it, her face changing. She excused herself, stepping into the kitchen, and I knew it was Tom's email. When she came back, her smile was gone, her eyes locked on me like she'd figured it out. Debra, a word, she said, her voice sharp, and I followed her to the hallway away from the guests. I just got fired, she hissed, holding up her phone. They said it's because of ethical concerns raised by a trusted source. This is you, isn't it? I didn't flinch. You brought this on yourself, Olivia, I said, and she laughed, bitter and mean. You jealous old woman, you can't stand that I'm successful. I wanted to tell her I'd gotten her that job, but before I could, Bobby walked over, his face grim. Olivia, enough. Bobby said, his voice low but firm. Debra didn't just mess with your job. She got you that promotion in the first place. Olivia froze, her phone slipping in her hand, and I saw Wayne step into the hallway, confused. What's going on? He asked, and Bobby turned to him, holding up the folder of debt documents I'd shown him. Your wife's been lying, Wayne. Debra vouched for her with Tom, got her the vice president role, and Olivia repaid her by blowing through $12,000 of Debra's money, racking up $50,000 in debts, and threatening to keep Carolyn from her. Olivia's face went pale, and she stammered, Dad, that's not true, but Bobby cut her off. I saw the statements, Olivia. You've been using everyone. Me, Maria, Debra, even Wayne. Wayne grabbed the folder, flipping through it, his jaw tight, and I saw the moment he realized Bobby was right. Olivia turned to me, her voice shaking. "Debra, I didn't know it was you. I'm sorry. Okay, let's fix this." Her apology was so fake, her eyes darting like she was calculating her next move, and I wasn't having it. "No, Olivia," I said, my voice steady. "You called me useless, spent my money like it was yours, threatened my granddaughter. You're done." I walked back to the dining room, leaving her standing there, and Wayne followed, still clutching the folder, his face a mix of shock and anger. "Mom, is this true? You got her the job?" he asked, and I nodded. "I did it for you, for Carolyn, to make things better. But she's been using us all." He looked at Olivia, who'd trailed behind trying to grab his arm. "Wayne, she's exaggerating," she said, but he pulled away, shaking his head. "I need to think," he said, and walked out, leaving the party buzzing with whispers. I stayed for Carolyn, helping her open a gift, a new coloring book. But Olivia wasn't done. She cornered me in the kitchen, later her voice low and desperate. "Debra, call Tom, tell him it's a mistake. I'll pay you back. I swear. $15,000, whatever you want." I looked at her, seeing the same woman who'd laughed at my star, who'd threatened to take Carolyn away, and I felt nothing but disgust. "You're not getting another dime from me," I said, and walked away grabbing my coat. She followed, grabbing my arm. "You'll regret this," she hissed. But I pulled free, heading for the door. Bobby stopped me outside, his face tired. "You did the right thing," he said. "I'll talk to Wayne. Make sure he sees the truth." I nodded, thanking him. But Olivia's threat about Carolyn still hung over me, and I knew this wasn't over. I got a call from Wayne as I drove home, his voice breaking. "Mom, I saw the debts, the lies. I don't know what to do." I told him to come over, and he showed up an hour later, folder in hand, looking like he'd aged 10 years. "She told me it was for Carolyn," he said, sitting on my couch. "The boat, the trips, all of it." I handed him a coffee, saying, "She's been playing us, Wayne. You need to decide what's best for Carolyn." He nodded but didn't answer, and I knew he was torn because Olivia was his wife, but the truth was staring him in the face. Before he left, he hugged me, something he hadn't done in years. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, and I told him we'd figure it out, but I wasn't sure how. Tom called later, confirming Olivia's termination was official. No going back, and I felt a weight lift because she couldn't hurt me through that job anymore. But then Olivia texted her words. "Cold, you took my job. I'll take Carolyn." I called her right away, my voice firm. "You try that, Olivia, and you'll lose everything." She laughed, saying, "I'm not scared of you," and hung up, leaving me gripping Carolyn's star, knowing I'd just pushed her to the edge and she was going to fight dirty. I didn't know how this would end, but I was ready for whatever she threw at me, because I wasn't losing my granddaughter, not to her, not to anyone. Olivia's text threatening to take Carolyn away because I'd gotten her fired was burning a hole in my phone when Wayne called, saying he needed to talk right away, his voice so raw I knew he'd seen through her lies, after Bobby dropped the point, and truth about her $50,000 debts, and my role in getting her the vice president job she'd just lost. I set Carolyn's wooden star on my kitchen table, the one I'd carved for her Christmas gift, and told Wayne to come over because I wasn't going to let Olivia's threats scare me, not after she'd called me useless, blown $12,000 of my money on luxury. Nonsense, demanded $10,000 more, and tried to fake an apology when Bobby exposed her at their Christmas Eve party. I'd cut her off, refused her $15,000 bribe to save her job, and now Wayne was finally waking up, but I knew this was going to be the fight that broke everything apart. Wayne showed up at my apartment, clutching the folder of debt documents Bobby had given me, his face, pale eyes red like he'd been arguing all night. He sat on my couch, spreading the papers out, pointing at charges for a boat vacations, and stuff Olivia had sworn was for Carolyn. "She lied to me, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "All this time saying it was for our family, and she's been bleeding us dry." I handed him a glass of water, saying, "I tried to tell you, Wayne. She's been using my money too, $12,000 in a month." He nodded, flipping through the folder, then looked up, his voice hard. "I confronted her last night. She admitted some of it, but said you pushed her to it by freezing the account. I couldn't believe she'd twist it like that, blaming me for her greed, but I stayed calm. She threatened to keep Carolyn from me unless I paid $10,000, I said, and Wayne slammed the folder shut. That's it. I'm done. He left saying he was going to talk to Olivia, and I called my bank to make sure the shared account was permanently closed because I wasn't giving her another chance to touch my money. The manager confirmed it was locked, and I set up a new account for Carolyn's future, one only I could access, putting in $10,000 to start because I wanted her taken care of without Olivia's hands anywhere near it. Then Bobby called his voice, tired but firm. Wayne's at our house, he said. He and Olivia are fighting. It's bad, Debra. I asked if Carolyn was okay, and he said, she's with Maria, but she's confused asking for you. I told him I'd come over because I needed to be there for my granddaughter, no matter how ugly this got. I drove to Bobby and Maria's place, a big house in Portland suburbs, and walked into chaos. Wayne and Olivia were in the living room yelling so loud I could hear them from the driveway. Carolyn was upstairs with Maria coloring, and when she saw me, she ran over hugging me. Grandma, why's everyone mad? She asked, and I knelt down giving her the star. Grown-up stuff, sweetie. You keep this okay, she nodded, and Maria took her back to her room, leaving me to face the firestorm. I stepped into the living room, and Olivia turned on me, her face twisted. You did this, Debra. You got me fired, turned Wayne against me. Wayne cut her off, holding up the debt folder. No, Liv, you did this. $50,000 in debt, lying about everything. She laughed sharp and desperate. You're both pathetic, ganging up on me. I stayed quiet, letting Wayne handle it, because he needed to see her for who she was. Wayne pulled out his phone, showing Olivia a text from his lawyer. I'm filing for divorce, he said, his voice steady. And I'm going for full custody of Carolyn. Olivia froze, then lunged for the phone, but he stepped back. You're not taking my daughter, she screamed, and Bobby stepped in, grabbing her arm. Olivia, stop, he said, his voice low. You've lost control. She yanked free, turning to me, her eyes wild. This is your fault, Debra. You wanted this. I looked at her, the woman who'd spent my money, threatened my granddaughter, and lied to my son, and said, You brought this on yourself. She stormed out, slamming the door, and Wayne sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Bobby nodded at me like we'd done what we had to, but I knew this was only the beginning. I took Carolyn home with me that night because Wayne needed space to deal with the lawyer, and Olivia wasn't in any state to be around her. We sat at my table coloring, and she asked, Is Mommy coming back? I told her, Your mom and dad are sorting things out, but you'll always have me and your dad. She hugged me, and I held her tight, promising I'd never let Olivia take her away. Wayne called later saying he'd met with his lawyer, who was confident he'd get custody because of Olivia's financial mess and threats. She's already lawyered up, he said, sounding drained. But Bobby's backing me even against Maria. I told him I'd pay for the lawyer, whatever it took, but no more money for him or Olivia ever, and he agreed, saying, I'm sorry I let it get this far, Mom. Olivia tried one last move, showing up at my apartment, uninvited, her makeup, smudged, holding a check for $10,000 like that, would fix everything. Debra, I'll pay you back, she said, her voice soft, fake sweet. Let's call this a misunderstanding. I took the check, tore it in half, and handed it back. You're done, Olivia, I said. No more money, no more games. She stared at me, then laughed cold and mean. You'll never see Carolyn again, she said, but I shut the door in her face, knowing Wayne's lawyer had her threats on record, and she didn't have a leg to stand on. I called Wayne right after telling him what happened, and he said, She's desperate, Mom. The divorce is moving fast. The divorce went through quicker than I expected, because Olivia's lies unraveled in court. The judge saw the debt, documents, her threats, even her firing for ethical issues, and granted Wayne full custody of Carolyn, with Olivia getting supervised visits. I was there when Wayne picked Carolyn up from the courthouse, her little hand in his carrying her star. Grandma, she yelled, running to me, and I hugged her, knowing I'd fought for this moment. Wayne moved into a smaller place in Portland, just him and Carolyn, and I started picking her up from school every Wednesday, like I used to coloring with her, talking about stars. Olivia called once begging to see Carolyn, but Wayne handled it, saying she'd have to go through the court, and I stayed out of it because I was done with her. I sat at my table one night, Carolyn's star in front of me, and opened my bank statement, seeing the new account I'd set up, for her growing with every deposit I made money. Olivia would never touch. Bobby stopped by bringing coffee, and we talked about Wayne, how he was starting over, learning to stand up for himself. "You saved them, Debra," he said. And I shrugged, saying, "I just did what I had to." He nodded, and we sat in silence, both knowing Olivia was out there probably scheming, but she couldn't hurt us anymore. I looked at Carolyn's star, thinking about the family I'd fought, to keep the boundaries I'd set, and for the first time in months, I felt free, like I'd taken my life back, and no one, not Olivia, not anyone could take it away again. If this story hit you, check out the next one on your screen. Click subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. Thanks for being here.